over why people are deploying IoT initiatives. So really not necessarily looking at IoT itself, but really the reasons for deploying it. Just a quick bit about Salford City Council. So we've got about 249,000 residents, 90,600 businesses across the area. And we were the fastest growing economy in GM and one of the fastest in the UK. And a lot of that is really being driven by startups growing out of Media City and the surrounding area, which is also home to the BBC and the ITV Northern operations. We've also got a leading university and an NHS trust, which is a digital exemplar across the world. And recently, the other night, we picked up Digital Leaders Council and overall winner for digital excellence. So there's a big emphasis really in the organisation about digital first and using that technology to underpin a change and a transformation in the organisation. Just a quick look at what we're going to cover today is really IoT and big data to me are kind of one and the same. We're generating a lot more data from IoT devices out there. And it's really about using all of that information to really look at how we develop a smart city, look at machine-to-machine communication, and really how that then allows us primarily to do early intervention, which obviously leads to efficient services, reducing waste, and really unlocking a lot of information about what's going on in the city. We kind of, as an IT function as well, are really changing our emphasis of what we look at. So we've still got that traditional function of looking at networks and data centers and applications, but more and more these days we're changing our emphasis onto sort of the cloud, data analytics, IoT and transformation, supporting the wider transformation across the council. That's really, as I say, is align ourselves further with the business. Great statement I seen the other day was turning spaghetti into lasagna. So whenever we design everything, it all looks nice and pretty. We stack upon stack upon stack. The reality, when you actually look at it, is it's more like spaghetti and integration across the environments. And it's really how we simplify that and present that more kind of stack that looks great on the Visio diagram back to the business in reality as well. And we want to get away from that kind of traditional function of just keeping the lights on and really adding value to the organisation, whilst it's obviously facing some challenging times and needs to be a lot more innovative and transformational. And again, it's, as I say, it's moving up the stack, getting away from hardware, getting away from config and patching and that kind of thing, and really moving up the stack to where we can add that value. A lot of that is being done by looking at enterprise architecture in a big way. So that's kind of taking the vision of the organisations that we work with, developing digital and IT strategies that support that, tapping into our technical roadmaps, and producing a portfolio of application data infrastructure and security that we can then flow into projects and eventually into business as usual. And that kind of all sits under governance where we can oversee, that day-to-day operation still, but really looking at being influenced by a standard technology roadmap, which is influenced from technology trends out there in the business, in what's going on in the wider world. So one of the areas that we really look at as part of that is Gartner's recent strategic top 10 directions, and they talk about an intelligent digital mesh. So it's about taking all that intelligence, blending that intelligence, and then using that to automate services provisioning across the organisation. So it kind of fits into those three areas. And looking into the future, you kind of got that AI foundations, which is sort of seeing, reading, and emotions. So thinking of things like Alexa and Siri to actually take some of the more fundamental data and kind of turning that into intelligence. We've then got more and more intelligent apps and analytics. So again, looking at that IoT and the intelligent devices out there and how that's gathering data and making that work in more of an intelligent way. that then obviously goes into digital twins, and somebody asked me what the hell is a digital twin, and then they've seen the Experian advert where it's basically got the two guys sat on the couch, and that's really what we're looking at, is creating a digital map of different people across the city, and really trying to pull those various different data sources together so we can see what's going on about a single person or a family or a business across the city, and their various interactions with us as an organisation, but also with partner organisations. Cloud to the edge, so obviously everybody's looking at public cloud in a fairly big way these days, but for me it's about putting the workloads where it's right. So some of those should be in the hyperscale clouds like AWS and Azure, but there's still a role for a private cloud, and more we're moving compute to the edge as well. So as we deploy IoT out there, we really need to do some of that crunching right within the branch, and we've also got a lot of the software defined stuff going on, so whether that's WAN, LAN, access layers, so being able to actually provide that in the branch and breaking out locally to the internet rather than relying on MPLS networks. And it's really kind of then looking forward to that kind of conversational platforms where we can use use technology to kind of replace some of those easy to deliver interactions with people, and then looking longer term, things like immersive experience, so particularly around planning. So when you're looking at a city planning view, you can use some of the augmented reality and virtual reality to actually see what's going on when you're looking at planning, particularly on long-term developments. You know, what we're looking at with Media City is going to quadruple in size over the next 20 years. There's a lot of work going on the corridor down into central Manchester within Salford with the university. They have a lot of plans for that area, and you know, Salford is right on the border with central Manchester, so there's a lot of growth. And lucky for us, a lot of people don't see where the border is, so we're getting a lot of investment in that kind of inner city area, which is helping us right across the city. And then we can kind of move on to the mesh side of things, so that's using all of that intelligence that's being gathered from various different locations, different systems, and then using that really to create change. So blockchain is something that we're looking at. Our service reform director is quite keen to look at some kind of local currency or points-based system so we can influence behavioural change. So there's examples of that in other areas in the UK and across Europe where they've kind of used, whether it be for recycling, whether it be for, you know, helping out in the community, whether it be working with health and get people to the gym, you know, it's using that local currency to influence behavioural change, and you know, really kind of trying to make a difference through the city on kind of early intervention again. Because you know, as the budgets get tighter and tighter, the lowest cost to make something change is right at the beginning. The longer it's left, the more expensive it gets. Looking at event-driven stuff, so obviously all of the IoT stuff is developing data, so it's how we actually utilise that to drive change through the city in an automated way. And then it's kind of also looking at the security side, not necessarily just from an IT perspective, but also from a public safety perspective. You know, you're looking at all of this data flowing around, and there's obviously a big concern about, you know, the content of that data. So security very much underpins everything that we do, and to make sure it's more adaptive. Most of the threats these days you only know about after they've happened, so it's kind of looking for those trends in normal days and looking for patterns and looking at, you know, abnormalities in that rather than the traditional security way of protecting networks and data. So just looking at IoT, this is my own viewpoint, it's more evolutionary rather than revolutionary. Machines making machines is a great Star Wars statement, but really kind of, I always look at IoT with the car factories, you know, those machines that have been really automating the building of cars for a long time now. They're all producing data, they're all reporting back to a central point of where they're up to, any faults, whether they need extra paint, all that kind of data is stored within the factory ecosystem from an IT perspective. And I know when we're looking at some of the implications of Brexit, a lot of this within car factories is done just in time delivery, so items are arriving with hours of when they're needed. And so that's a big concern for obviously the manufacturers are looking at Brexit is, if there's delay in customs, it's really going to impact their business. And I think we can learn from that in that, that's a very slick operation, everything is automated. And if you look at that, alongside what we already do from an IT perspective, network monitoring systems are constantly sending data from end devices, information, and that's all IoT in its very early form. Now what we've got to look at doing is how do we scale that up, whether it be right across a city, right across a region. And the implications are around kind of the environmental, health, transport and safety, the main focus areas for us. So just looking at some potential use cases that we're looking at, so and some of the anticipated outcomes. So smart parking is the obvious one. At the moment, we obviously see in quite a lot of the cities, which car parks have got spaces. But what we want to do is really take that to the next level. So you direct it, so you hit a multi-story park, and it allows you then to really understand whereabouts within that car park the spaces. And as we move forward, that could be, then specific to what type of car you're driving, whether it's electric or whether it's, traditional car, the size of it. You could really add some intelligence, so you're not driving around and round and round looking for spaces. You're reducing your emissions and you're reducing your journey times, which obviously helps with economic growth. Waste management, not the sexiest thing to talk about in the world, but has a real impact. And I'm not really talking about household waste removal, it's more kind of public space and businesses. So we can obviously improve the recycling, but also if we think about parks and places like that, on the streets, at the moment we have our drivers going around emptying the bins on a regular basis, whether they're full or not, no matter what the weather's like. You can imagine on a hot day that you'd actually want to empty more often. If there's a festival going on or an event, then you'd want that park emptied more often. But if it's raining or if it's in the middle of winter, do we need to empty those bins as often? So you're kind of really looking at monitoring that right across the city. And then also from a business perspective, they'll have days when they're busier, certain periods of time. So really trying to add a bit more intelligence around that rather than just doing it the same old way we've always done it. Intelligent lighting, so street lighting, Salford's one of the early adopters of the LED lighting. So we covered the city quite a while ago now. But looking forward, really putting a bit more intelligence into that, so they're all controllable. We're not currently really doing it other than the traditional way of switching them on at a certain time and switching them off. What we can actually do moving forward is actually see which ones are working and not, claim back money from the national providers. There's obviously energy savings if it's particularly light evening, we don't need to switch them on as early. But also looking at it from a safety perspective, if it's heavy rain, we can switch them on earlier, and also, dim them and bring them back up to full brightness if there's something going on in the area. So just add that kind of extra layer of intelligence and have them at different brightnesses at different times of the evening. Looking forward at smart roads. So everybody's seen the smart motorways going on around the M60. I'm sure they'll be finished eventually. But it's kind of taking that and doing that across a city scale. And it's not necessarily opening hard shoulders, but it's more around directing traffic down particular routes. It's about opening and shutting bus lanes potentially at different times of the day. And just generally alerting people to what's going on around the road network, but also traffic lights are fairly intelligent at the moment. If it's quiet, you turn up to them, the event they put you on green, but getting it to communicate with the next set of lights depending on what sort of lane you're in, kind of adding that extra layer of intelligence around the city. independent living is a big one, I think, for us, as the cost of care is going to spiral, as it already is doing. So how do we kind of use IoT technology to help people in their own homes, get them back into their own homes early from a primary care perspective, really being able to provide that kind of extra layer of care. You know, we're obviously doing stuff around dementia, but there's a whole kind of, as we have an aging population, how do we use technology to assist people and improve their lifestyle? And that kind of leads on to personal health. You know, a lot of people are wearing Fitbits and tracking the data, but what we're actually doing with that data is how do we, you know, utilise that data across the piece to really get that early intervention and avoid kind of the most expensive kind of care at primary care level. I know when I went for my old man's test at 40, it was kind of, they took my blood pressure and they took all these readings, but they said, we haven't seen you for 20 years, so we don't know what that means, whether it's good, bad or indifferent. And at that point I started tracking my own data, just really to understand, you know, what's going on with my own body and try and get that continual MOT test rather than every 5 years. So how do we use that technology in a way that's safe, and we're not doing we're not invading someone's personal information, but at least monetizing it in some way, so we can, you know, help people and alert people to potential changes. And then probably a more contentious one is kind of looking at people movement, but this is completely anonymized data, so we're all being tracked whether we like it or not, unless you turn your settings off on your phone. So all this data that we see around traffic and how busy a city is, and, you know, the red and black and hopefully green rows across, is obviously data coming back from phones. And we can tap into that data and understand how people are moving across the city. We can tailor public transport around that, but we can also look at that from a planning. Again, when we're doing these big redevelopments of areas of the city, is understanding how people use, whether it be commuting, whether it be walking, whether it be entertaining, how they use the areas, and then that sets the planning system and make those city centres relevant to them. This is something we're kind of getting in place, ready for all of those use case scenarios. So it's a standard smart data and analytics platform that we're developing for the city. So it's starting with kind of line of business systems, open data sources, taking those data sources and standardizing them against master data, so we can integrate line of business systems which traditionally haven't really had any interactions, haven't had any commonality between them. And we're starting to put open data into that as well. So we're using companies' house APIs. We're doing a lot of work with Experian to take kind of not just necessary people, but also businesses, so we can see which ones are growing in the city, which one might need additional help. I'm referencing that against both our business rate system, but also our environmental system, so we can see who are requesting visits for hygiene, etc., and really mapping all that data together to both assist those businesses, but also potentially to grow our own income from business rates as we get more and more responsible for that, and it's decentralised. So that platform it's a single integrated platform. It's really about processing, displaying data so people can consume it in a standard way rather than having lots of individual reports lying around the business. We're looking to make use of machine learning and AI to kind of make more informed decisions and really get on that early intervention. We're trying to turn the data from these systems into business language as well, so they can self-service data sets. It's about empowering the organisation to be data-led. As we move forward, data is going to be one of the most important currencies, in my view, moving forward. That's where we can really make a change as an IT function. And leading from about that behavioural change through analytics and targeted enticement. So where I was talking before about a local currency, we have My City Salford, which is a portal that is agnostic to the council and health, and it's really about the community, and we're trying to turn what is the council website into more the bureaucracy side of things, you know, what's happening in the minutes of council chambers and stuff like that, and moving all kinds of event-based stuff into that My City portal. And the idea eventually is that will have some form of, not necessarily targeted advertising, more targeted enticements based on who's logging in, what we know about them, what profiles they sit within, as much as we can do under GDPR anyway, and kind of really get them trying to influence the way that they work and communicate across the city. So all of that really is basically saying, from an IoT perspective, from a big data perspective, from an organisation, it's about using information to make more informed decisions as an organisation and the community that we work with. And that's about me done.
Great stuff, John. Well, that was a fantastic insight. I hope everybody enjoyed that. I think we covered lots of things in there. And you mentioned blockchain, right? The whole thing. I mean, that opens up so many different areas for us. So, guys, I popped on the chat a little bit before. If anyone's got any questions for John, then please pop them into the box now. And if it's all right, John, I've got a couple for you just to get it going. Is that all right?
Yeah.
So some of these initiatives that you talked about. Let's take a smart cities initiative for a start. Quite popular. There's a few case studies, certainly European cities. I believe Barcelona have got a quite big deployment. I believe Vegas have got a quite big deployment. And I was kind of wondering, for people on the call, what do you believe is the best way to approach that? And what I mean by that is how to get the funding, how to make a business case work. Where would you start?
So I think it really goes back again to the data and analytics side of things, because that's where you're going to see the real outcomes from it. So that's been our focus, is really to focus around having that standard platform in the middle that will take those data sources and standardise them. We can produce the data till the cows come home, but you've got to actually do something with that data and make it relevant to the organisation. And I think smart cities, like a lot of terms like big data, like IoT, are really more umbrella descriptions of a group of technologies, and it's finding the important bits out there. And not everything fits every city. I think we struggle a bit more in the UK because we have so many tiers of government as well, particularly in Manchester with the combined authority. So Barcelona, New York, Vegas, as you say, have got great use cases. We were talking to Cascais in Portugal, just outside of Lisbon, last week with Deloitte, and they're responsible for everything. So it makes things a lot easier to develop that smart cities initiative. Yeah. Whereas when you're looking at it within the UK, you've got so many different organisations responsible, which is why you really need to standardise your approach first and hope that they're doing the same, as then the integration points will then become a lot easier. Of course. So I think standardising your data, getting it matched, getting it into a common data source, so you're then in a position to exchange that data with other organisations. Yeah. That then obviously allows all the other things to be a lot easier. Event-driven stuff, AI and ML are a lot easier once you've got that single source of data to actually act upon.
Yeah, everything effectively.
Yeah. So I think that's the key starting point is getting.
So if I'm right, what you're saying is before you kind of go embarking on saying, hey, we're doing smart parking, or we're doing smart lighting, or we're revolutionising and digitising waste management, get the data in a format and in a central place, and then try and work out what question it is that you're trying to answer before you go down the route of.
Yeah, definitely. You can do all of those, but you would end up with islands of data.
Exactly, and this is the problem that you've got, because you've got a lot of, what I'm seeing in the marketplace is a lot of vertically integrated solutions that are solutions that you will buy that maybe just do parking. Yeah. And that is everything from sensor to a managed service from an ISV that is effectively providing a SaaS-based application, but that data, you don't really have access to it, you can't really cross-correlate it, you can't do sensor fusion, you can't do any of the things that you want to, because that data is effectively locked into a SaaS platform. And to try and integrate that, you can see the market now trying to move into much more ways where you build that central data platform and then everything just plugs in via an API, and you don't really have 10 different solutions, because a lot of companies out there will sell you a top-to-bottom smart parking solution, like they're not new. Nope. So just touching a little bit more on a topic of the minute then, so if you're talking things like AI, so you've mentioned that a couple of times there, so would the AI as being something that is, and I suppose you might say both here, so, just really to kick the point off, is it going to help you generate more revenue for the council or provide better service, or both? What sort of opportunities do you see the first ones for anybody working in local and regional government at the minute where they could get started with AI technology?
So definitely both.
Okay.
At the end of the day, we are effectively there as a service industry, whether it be public owned. And that's always got to be the priority is looking after those citizens. But we've also got to make sure we've got the revenue coming in to do that, because those services aren't free, even though they are delivered free to the people that consume them. So it's definitely about not necessarily generating revenue, but to make sure we're getting the revenue in that we should be getting in, which is the primary thing. Whether that's business rates, whether that's council tax, whether that's from leisure centres, etc. It's just making sure we are collecting what we should be collecting, and there's not fraud going on out there. People not paying, particularly on business rates, which is a bit more voluntary than the council tax side of things. So it's more self-declaring. So it's definitely about making sure we are at least generating what we should be generating, and we are not in a great position from collecting. We're one of the worst in GM for collecting that, so that's one of our big focus areas. We're doing a proof of concept. Our proof of concept on the data analytics platform is around business rates and collection. So it's getting that right. I think from what we're going to do, well, that's one example where we are going to be using AI is really looking at, I think the biggest one, the most aspirational one, which is from our city mayor, is really looking at how we can reduce debt and poverty across the city. And that's why we're talking to the likes of Experience to really understand that profile right across the city of the different kind of cohorts of people that live in the city. It's a very diverse city, from very affluent to very, deprived areas. So we covered a lot. So it's really understanding how, we can get in there early to stop people before they start spiralling, because what happens when you do get on that spiral down, the consequences can be quite major. People falling into depression, anxiety, and the consequences of that can be really significant, not just to us, but obviously to the NHS and the wider services.
Of course.
So that's our ultimate aspiration.
Getting much more preventative, I suppose.
So, as I said earlier, early intervention is the key to everything for us, from delivering services more efficiently. The sooner we get in there and help people, the lower the cost is, not necessarily just to us, but across public sector.
So where do you sort of see, so from a council, a local and regional government perspective, the IT department then, so from this perspective, you've always had a really forward-thinking IT department that's always moved with tech times, and we've seen that, we're working with yourselves for what must be now 7, 8, maybe 9 years, we've been doing things. I think, how are you sort of dealing with the skills, the culture, everything internally? Are you making any particular changes in IT internally to deal with this? Are you setting up different functions? Are you changing the hierarchy? What kind of things are you looking at internally to make sure you're getting the best out of these? How are you liaising with the organisation better from a tech perspective into the requirements?
I think you're right with what you're saying with the technology side of things, and we have over-focused on that over the years. And we work with a lot of organisations, it's not just the City Council. And I think over the time, our relationship with the City Council has kind of gone downhill a bit. We've kind of been taking them for granted and then taking us for granted, and there's been a bit of a distance between us, and we're really looking to address that now moving forward, with some work that we're doing with Service Birmingham, and looking really to address how we build those relationships back up within the City Council especially. And that's really focused around that enterprise architecture piece, and we're not really looking at doing it to a full TOGAF standard or anything like that. We're taking small parts out of it. I found something called the Tree Hooker's Guide to Enterprise Architecture, and it's brilliant. It does it on 3 pages rather than 850 pages.
You don't pass an exam either or anything like that.
Well, definitely. But that really, it's about engaging with the business, talking to the business, pipelining stuff, both from their requirements, where they want to go, and there's not any massive surprises coming out of that, but it's a two-way communication. It's informing them where we're going, what our roadmaps are, having them a bit more clearly defined, where we're going from a technology perspective. But more and more these days, it's moving away from the tech, unfortunately. I'm focusing more on that kind of data and transformational side of things. but we still get to play with some cool technology as well, you know, which is what the job's all about.
But it's better when the application of it is much more changing the life of a citizen or improving the council efficiency than it is of the latest, you know. And I suppose that's a message always from you, isn't it? Is don't focus on what's below the line, really, because you can't really add value there in that commoditised industry anymore. You know, the local and regional government IT departments now are moving into, you know, smart applications, smart data platforms, and that's really an amazing future for you to take the council and also the people that work with and around you.
For sure, and a lot of the stuff that we're doing with the Azure platform is, you know, we're spinning up a lot of these data analytics back systems and platforms in hours and days rather than months and years. You know, so it's really allowing us to get to the point where we're interested in, you know, installing SQL Server and Windows is not very interesting at all anymore. Probably never was, but thought it was at the time. But yeah, it's kind of focusing on that data side of things, but also kind of very quick to deliver apps. So we're using Flow and Power Apps as well from Microsoft, and we built a kind of lone worker app, so they could tap where they are in the city and people could see where they are, and it all went back into a central system, into the data analytics platform, and then there's a dashboard showing everybody where they are across the city. And we built that in about 2 hours, including the back-end SQL database to actually spin it up. You know, and that's a very powerful.
Well, the value that provides, though, right?
Massively, And we did a similar thing for tracking receipts and expenses. So, you know, it's not automated; it goes straight into our SAP platform, but at least we're tracking the expenses, the receipts electronically, so they can manually key those in all in one thing, and that took less than an hour to build. You know, and that's kind of where we're focusing now, is a lot of using this data platform and the outputs from it, but also building a lot of stuff with kind of low code, zero code applications, and using our dev guys to fill that gap between, you know, our power users who are kind of working on those, and then, you know, with the integration to back-end technology and kind of building more microservices, and eventually hopefully dev our way into, you know, a kind of local government platform and move away from, you know, the more archaic line of business systems.
They need upgrading once a year, big thing, big huge change control. You know, trying to get yourself into a much more agile delivery mechanism. So, John, that was brilliant, and that was a great insight into what you guys are doing. I think if nobody's got any questions on there, everyone seems to be shy today. But I hope that was okay for everybody. Thanks everybody for joining. So, John, how can they get hold of you? You don't mind people emailing you or anything if you want to drop you a line? And
so the email's up there on the screen.
So Salford.gov.uk. You don't tweet or anything like that? No, not there yet.
I've always got more than 255 characters to say.
Well, that's a good excuse. Well, look, everybody, thank you very much. So I'd like to say a big thanks to John for taking his time out today and putting that presentation together for us. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And thanks for everybody who joined, and I hope, you know, the people who did join us on the call got something out of it. And so everybody have a great day. Look forward to this evening. Come on, England, and we'll take it from there, and hope to see you all on the next one. So thanks again, everybody. Goodbye.